Hello friends! In this video we are going to make this beautiful and delicious strawberry shortcake, and I am going to make it the way that I prefer it, which is with this biscuit type of situation instead of cakey cake type of situation. So let's go ahead and make this. It's going to be fantastic. Alrighty, so I'm going to start by cutting up my strawberries. So these are some strawberries that I bought yesterday, and when I'm filming this, it's early, almost summer. It's not quite summer, but these strawberries are not that sweet, so I'm going to show you how to remedy that. So all you need to do is kind of flake those little stem bits away and cut off the top. If you do not have a strawberry core, like a specific tool for this, I cannot think of the right name for it, but if you don't have one of those, just use a small and sharp knife and you can cut your strawberries into quarters. I rinsed my strawberries and now I'm putting them into a container. As you can see that I am using about 11 strawberries for this, and then I'm going to take some plain old granulated sugar and I'm going to take 2 tablespoons and sprinkle it over the top. Now, if your strawberries are perhaps from later in the year during the actual summer season, and if they are sweeter, you can adjust the sugar based on your preferences. So I actually tasted one of these strawberries before I started this process, and I knew that they were not very sweet. Next, I am shaking the sugar and strawberry mixture just to help the sugar begin to be more incorporated with the strawberries and to get everything all acquainted. And when you do that, you'll actually see pretty quickly that the strawberries begin to release their juice, and this process is called maceration. So you're going to let the strawberries macerate in the granulated sugar while you do the rest of the process. Next, I'm taking some flour. This is plain old all-purpose flour, and I am going to add 1 1/3 cups. So I will link the recipe that I am following. I will put a link to it in the description box. This recipe is from Sally's Baking Addiction, and she has some really great baking recipes that are pretty much foolproof. So I like to use her recipes. So I am making half of the recipe that I will link below, and so for that I needed just a little bit of flour and a little bit of sugar. So I measured those things out using my dry measuring cups. Next, for the rest of the ingredients, so onto our leaveners. So we are going to use both baking powder, as you see here, and we're also going to use some baking soda. So for this biscuit recipe, you do need both baking powder and baking soda. You'll also need a little bit of salt. If I haven't said it before, it's very important to put a little bit of salt in whatever sweet desserts that you are going to make. I am now mixing those dry ingredients up very well with a small whisk. It's important to do this step so you have all of your baking powder and soda, so all of your leaveners evenly distributed through your mixture. Next, I'm going to make some makeshift buttermilk. So this recipe calls for buttermilk, and I don't keep buttermilk in my refrigerator, but I did have some plain vitamin D whole milk. So I just used that, and then I added a little bit of vinegar. So that process makes the milk start to coagulate and have a similar texture and chemical function as buttermilk. So mix it together and put it to the side. Next, I'm taking these 6 tablespoons of butter. So this is cold, unsalted butter. And for the half a recipe that I'm making, you need the 6 tablespoons. And again, everything will be linked below, so you can check out her website directly. You want to make sure to give her credit for this recipe. Alrighty, so I cut the butter into cubes, as you saw there, and then I'm just breaking the pieces of butter into smaller cubes. They're cut, but they're still like stuck together. So I broke all of those pieces of butter apart. You have to work a little bit quickly because your hands are warm and will start to melt the butter. So then I mixed those butter cubes in with the flour to kind of help them get coated in the flour. And then I started to use my little pie masher thing here. What is the name of this thing? Dough cutter. I think this is called a pie cutter or dough cutter. And so I just mashed and mashed and mashed until the butter was incorporated in the flour, and it was very small bits. So you can't really see the best right here, but the milk, after you leave it to set with the vinegar or lemon juice in it, it starts to coagulate, and that is what you want. So now I just mixed everything together and then pulled out a baking piece of baking paper, so like parchment paper, and then put a little bit of flour down, and then I put the entire mixture, all of the mixture from the bowl, onto the parchment paper. The parchment paper just makes it a little bit easier to clean up your cutting board. The dough is a bit sticky, so you'll need a little bit of flour on your hands and on the parchment paper, or on the bench directly, or however you decide to do this. But I just use the parchment paper to make it a little bit easier to clean up. And you can see that I'm just mashing the dough a little bit and folding it over and over in different directions. That helps to create some layers in any kind of biscuit, not just a sweet biscuit, but that book folding kind of method helps to create some layers. And next, I'm just using the heel of my palm to mash down the dough into a somewhat even layer. So then I'm going to take my round cookie cutter. You can also use like a metal measuring cup if you have one. That would be quite difficult to get it out, but you can also use a knife, and you can just cut the biscuits into whatever shape that you would like. To be honest, I only dug out this circular cookie cutter because I was filming this. Almost every other time that I make this, I just cut the dough into triangles and get on with life. But you can definitely, if you want to make it extra special and very pretty, you can use some type of circular dough cutter, like a cookie cutter or whatever. And then I cut out those perfect little circles. And you can also use a rolling pin for making the dough flat. I did not feel like washing my rolling pin, so I just used my hands. So I'm using my offset spatula to scoop up those perfectly circular pieces of biscuit. So the first round that I made 4. So now I'm going to take my dough and put just a teeny bit more flour on my hands and on the paper, and just mash out the dough again. You want to make sure to mash out the dough to the same level that you mashed out the first set, so everything will bake at the same time and the same rate. So I was able to make 1 more, and then I just repeated this process, until all of the dough was gone. So I'm going to be able to make one more perfectly circular one, and then put that one on the greased, lightly greased parchment paper on top of a cookie sheet. So that last little ugly one, don't waste your dough, don't throw it away. That little ugly one tastes as good as the round one, okay? So just put that little ugly one over to the side in a circular formation, and you make sure to eat it, don't waste it. So now taking a little bit of the milk, and you can do this with a brush, or you can do it with this really kind of ingenious method that I'm using here, using just a teeny bit of milk and a spoon, drop it onto the top of the biscuit, and then brush it. I guess that's the motion, even though we're doing it with a spoon, but you will brush it over the tops of each of the biscuits. This helps the biscuits to brown and also provides a little bit of like glue for the sugar. So as you can see here, I am just taking a little bit more of my granulated sugar, and I'm putting it in my hand and dropping the sugar onto the biscuit from a high distance, and that helps to distribute the sugar evenly. So I put those into the oven, 400 degrees, and while they're baking, I moved on to make the whipped cream. So the strawberry shortcake is the cake or biscuit part, the strawberries, and the whipped cream. So for my whipped cream, you can make it plain old whipped cream with no flavoring. That's still very tasty actually, but I'm going to make mine a little bit special by adding 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm making just a little bit of this whipped cream, so that's why my measurements are so small for this, but 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla and 1/8 of a teaspoon of almond extract. And you may think that's such a tiny little amount. What difference does it make? If you ever try this, you'll see it makes a big difference. Makes it very tasty. I also put like a few granules of salt into my whipped cream because I'm also going to add some confectioner sugar. So when I say a little bit, I mean just like a teeny little bit. Do you see that? That was like 14 granules of salt. So don't put too much. I've done that before, and you don't want salty whipped cream, it's weird. So then I put a little bit of confectioner sugar in there, and then I whipped it up. If you tilt the bowl when you're making like a teeny bit of whipped cream, tilt the bowl so more of the liquid is like in one place, and that will make it much faster for you to start to incorporate the air into the whipped cream. So as you can see, it takes quite a while to whip cream. I'm using my hand mixer here because it's such a small amount, and you just beat it until it is pretty thick. Don't beat it too much because it will eventually turn to butter, but if you beat it until it's pretty thick, and then you can flip the bowl over, boom, and it doesn't come out, then you're ready to go. So you can beat it to the thickness that you like. I like it pretty stiff, so that's what I did. And now the whipped cream is all set. Now I'm going to take my whipped cream and put it into a glass container, and it can just go in the refrigerator. This is more than enough for one serving, so I will just keep the rest of the whipped cream in the refrigerator. It will definitely keep for, probably 2 days or so. But it'll taste so good. You see me tasting it right there. It will taste so good that there's no way it's gonna last in your refrigerator for 2 days. Now I will just put my airtight lid over it and stick it in the fridge. So here are my strawberries. You can see the juice that they have released. Again, I only made like a little bit of this recipe, so you can see that I do have some juice though. So I am now going to take one of my biscuits. So I let the biscuits cool a little bit. You can see that I'm handling them just fine by hand. And I am going to split one of the biscuits like so. And we're basically going to make kind of like a little bit of a layer. So on the bottom half of the biscuit, you can spoon over some strawberries and get a little bit of the juice as well. I would say to not try to put too much strawberries, too much juice on the bottom layer, because when you eat it, you want to be able to taste the strawberries and the biscuit and the whipped cream. So now I'm going to add a bit of the whipped cream to my strawberries. I do not have enough tools to make everything look perfect like, you know, we were in a restaurant. But this is the Basic As Cooking channel. So we do things that taste good and sometimes they look just okay. So to make the top look pretty enough, then you can add some more strawberries on the top and a little bit of the juice. And fun fact, the strawberry shortcake that you saw at the beginning of the video was the second one that I assembled, so I would have a pretty thumbnail for you to click on and come join me in this video. But as you can see, this first attempt, it looked like it did, you know? But anyway, that is our fantastic strawberry shortcake made from scratch. You can do this in probably under an hour. So make this for yourself, for lunch, make it for your friends, your family. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Basic As Cooking, signing off. Please subscribe and bye.